Good afternoon. Welcome to the Legislative Funding and Public Affairs Committee of the Midpeninsula Regional Open Space District. I'm Craig Gleason, Chair of the committee. This meeting is now called to order. It is 3:05 p.m. This meeting is held in person at the district's administrative office and by teleconference pursuant to Government Code Section 54953. Members of the public can attend and participate in the meeting in person or via Zoom, and instructions for submitting public comments are available on the meeting agenda. Could we please have the roll call?
Director Sear? Director Sear?
Here.
Chair Gleason?
Here.
And Director Christine Tucker? Here. Thank you, all present.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Sear?
Yes.
Chair Gleason?
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker? Yes. Thank you.
Now's the time for oral communications for items not on the agenda. Are there any oral communications?
No, none.
Thank you. First item is to approve the May 16th, 2024 Legislative Funding and Public Affairs Committee meeting minutes. Do we have any public comments on this item?
No, we do not.
Okay, thanks. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right, roll call, please.
Director Sear?
Yes.
Chair Gleason?
Yes.
Director Christine Tucker? Yes. Thank you. Motion passes 3-0.
All right. Thank you. Our main business item is the draft 2025 legislative program. Could we have the staff presentation, please?
Okay. Yes. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Josh Hugg. I'm your Governmental Affairs Program Manager, and I'll be talking about our 2025 draft legislative program. Today's recommendations are for the committee to review and provide input on the draft program, and then to forward those recommendations onto the board for consideration at their December meeting. Just a little bit of background. The purpose of this, of having a legislative program that we review each year and adopt, it provides a level of consistency for the district when it comes to considering legislative matters. As you know, many pieces of legislation are proposed by both state and federal, and in some cases, local jurisdictions, and this provides a framework to consider those. Most bills are considered on a case-by-case basis, but having this lens allows us to be consistent with the mission and the goals of the board. It also prompts both the board and staff to think about their work in higher level policy terms. How does that work relate to the greater community beyond the district's immediate holdings? And then in many cases, the complexity of legislation transcends individual departments. So there's a level of interdepartmental coordination, and in many cases, it sparks ideas for us to consider to improve the way that we do business. And doing this year to year, it helps to hone the abilities of both the board and staff in this regard. We've broken up the program into two areas. One is policy positions. Think of these as boilerplate positions that the district will maintain year to year, regardless of changes. Though certainly, through this process, you can adjust it as necessary. But it does help to crystallize the thinking of the board and staff, ensures consistent advocacy, and then supports the coalition building in cooperation with partners as you know, we have a constellation of conservation agencies, both governmental and nonprofit, that work on these, and this helps us to participate in those coalitions. And then finally, it's an expression of district values, just like the budget does every year. This legislative program allows us to maintain that consistently. Whoops. Policy priorities. This is the first year of the 25-26 legislative session, and the policy priorities are categorized by the individual board strategic plan goals, and the implications of having these priorities is that the district staff will be actively working on these rather than simply waiting for bills to come to us. In some cases, we'll be initiating legislation, or when legislation is presented to us, hundreds of pieces of legislation, sometimes thousands. Those few that resonate with these priorities will receive active attention to either support or oppose as they are considered by the respective legislatures. So getting into the individual priorities for this year, the state priorities, goal one of the board, under goal one of the board, climate adaptation strategy. This is a continuing process over the last few years. The state, particularly the California Natural Resources Agency, had been formulating a variety of approaches to address aspects of climate change. Many of those plans are already complete. Now they're on to the implementation side, and that can manifest itself both with policy and funding priorities. So we keep tabs on that implementation, and we seek to influence it to support our mission goals. And I can stop at any one of these if anyone has any questions, or certainly go through to the end. Goal number 2, we have 3 items that are considered priorities. One is ecologically sensitive vegetation management. This one is particularly timely. Well, one, this approach seeks to integrate both wildfire fuel risk reduction with biodiversity enhancements. So the approach that the district takes when it comes to doing fuel treatments looks to advance both of those goals through the way that we do this. Things like timing of vegetation removal prior to seed formation by certain species of plants, certainly getting rid of invasive species in favor of native species on a landscape. What makes this also very timely is that on Proposition 4, there's about $200 million for CNRA to allocate to, among other things, well, they call it environmentally sensitive vegetation management, but it for all intents and purposes, it's ecologically sensitive vegetation management. So we have an interest in making sure, one, that item is funded, but also to the guidelines or to the understanding that we have for that approach. So we are actually working with a coalition of stakeholders, amongst which is the California Native Plant Society, California Invasive Plant Council, and others, the Open Space Authority, East Bay, Valley Water, to ensure that those guidelines fit our concept of ESVM. So that is one priority for us. Permit streamlining and cutting the green tape. This is a continuing effort, both for cost and time of implementation of our projects. But as you know, in lean budget years, cutting the cost of doing business can almost be as valuable as having additional funding. So there are a number of irons in the fire there. Last year, we worked with other stakeholders to advance the reauthorization of the statutory exemption for restoration projects. We are interested in expanding that to not just individual projects, but ongoing stewardship, what some call routine maintenance. So streamlining that process, because for districts like ours, PRC 5500 districts, net environmental benefits is part of our mission. So to treat routine maintenance like culvert replacement, just like you would a developer building a strip mall, just on principle, doesn't jive with our goals. So we're looking at continuing to pursue that. And then finally, sustainable patterns of development. I'm sorry, did you?
I do, but you can finish if you like. Oh,
Well, I'm happy to stop anytime.
okay. So I have a question that spans really this slide and the last one.
Okay.
And it has to do with our conservation grazing program.
Sure.
So for example, yesterday we had this wonderful tour of some of the grazing lands and got to see an area that had just been mowed by a contractor that did some really incredibly detailed and kind of tailored mowing that didn't disturb the land and, kind of allowed them to place the mower down. Anyway, so my question would be, in terms of looking for grants, are we looking for grants that would fund that kind of work? Are we looking in the agricultural sector? Would it fall under the climate adaptation strategies or the ecologically sensitive vegetation management, or is there?
Well, so this Prop 4 will become a well, fingers crossed, will become a grant opportunity. In some cases, though, it's creating our own grant opportunities. We've had discussions with CAL FIRE in the past. They understand the concept that we're promoting and actually support it. The feedback that we've gotten, though, has been, well, we don't want to put additional restrictions on our existing grant sources. So, if you create a new pot of money, we'd support you applying it to this. So in many cases, it's not that it would be less eligible for the existing grants. We would apply our own, our ESVM technique regardless. It's trying to make it the standard by which all these grants are ultimately judged. So whether it's bonus points for using and in some cases you can look at ESVM as IPM, integrated pest management, taking an IPM approach to vegetation management with their traditional funding sources, and prefacing those applications that commit to that approach. It's a work in progress, really, and I think the Prop 4 program is one of the first that explicitly calls that out. So there's money out there. It's advancing, this dual purpose. The state of California has this biodiversity goal. We have a biodiversity baked into our mission. How do we extend that beyond just our standard of practice?
So I think I understand what you're saying. I think.
Yeah, sorry if I'm
dancing
around it.
What I'm hearing is that part of what our goal is here is to promote these practices beyond Midpen.
Yes. Yeah.
But what I'm thinking is we've got a lot of vegetation management that needs money. So
right.
We use that as a demonstration project that says this works really well. So we think this is the standard that other entities in the state should use, or is that?
Yeah, we're not hamstringing our existing vegetation management using the existing grants, but it is trying to turn the ship in a sense that our approach becomes the standard.
Yeah, not that we would hamstring. The question would be whether we could broaden, the pools of money that we might be eligible for.
Yeah. And we've had discussions with WCB about doing controlled research, treat a plot of land with conventional approaches, treat plots of land using ESVM, to look at the differences both in vegetation types, but perhaps even movement of wildlife across the landscape, because part of the approach is that you're not denuding an area, you're creating islands of, little mini refugia for
Right.
wildlife to move across the landscape. Any number of metrics there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I had one, I think, quick question on the next slide.
Oh, sure.
Is CNRA a parent organization of CDFW?
They are the umbrella organization of a host of organizations. Wildlife Conservation Board, CAL FIRE, Department of Conservation. Yeah, I'd have to look at the list
Okay,
to be
great.
honest, but yeah, they cover almost everything. Secretary Wade Crowfoot, who we were fortunate enough to host him on a hike at Wilbur's Watch a couple of years ago, I think now. He oversees all of that.
Thanks.
So the final item here under goal 2 is sustainable patterns of development. So this can be viewed in a variety of different ways. One is certainly promoting things like urban infill, where you're not consuming greenfield locations or open space as communities grow. And the other one is, I guess it's a little bit more defensive. We had a number of bills last year, SB 3150 or AB 3150 and SB 610, authored by Senator Scott Wiener, that would have changed the fire hazard severity zone system to make it mitigatable, and in doing so would make it easier to build in high fire risk areas. So we opposed that bill. We participate in things like local housing elements. If you recall, last year or the year before, San Mateo County was considering adding additional housing opportunities across the San Mateo coast in these high fire risk areas, essential areas identified as essential habitat, and also high slope areas. And we had a conversation with them to strip those out. So maintaining a sustainable pattern of development not only makes it more sustainable from an emissions standpoint, building closer to transit, but it's also reducing the consumption of essential habitat, certainly wildlife corridors as well. Any questions? Okay. Number 3, connect people to open space and regional environmental protection vision for goal 3. Equitable public access is one of those. As you may know, communities, low-income communities, oftentimes one of the hurdles that they experience when accessing parks and open space is transportation. Open space, almost by definition, is far away. So how can we find ways to lower that barrier? In many cases, it's programmatic. We work with local schools for field trips, but in other cases, it's creating actual infrastructure. Right now we're pursuing a shuttle system for Purisima. And, anytime opportunities like that present themselves, we want to take advantage of that as much as possible. We're looking at federal earmarks coming up for the next legislature, actually state and federal. And, that would be a potential area that we'd pursue in that regard, would be funding for, let's say, for a shuttle pilot. Multimodal and public access infrastructure, I guess that in some ways complements the first one, but it's looking for ways to, make cars not always the default mode of accessing our preserves when possible. It's also expanding eligibility. It's something that we've been discussing with the larger trails community. We have a coalition of members within the Bay Area, the Bay Area Trails Collaborative, that looks at things like the state and federal active transportation program. Can that be extended not to just paved trails, which are often used for transit purposes, but also for natural surface recreation? Those trails being transit to immersive outdoor experiences or scenic views. So in some cases, it's reframing the concept and promoting that to gain eligibility. That would assist us to build more trails, and by doing that also create trails in areas that are more accessible to these multimodal opportunities rather. And then finally, number 4 here, goal number 4, we have 3 here. The first one is a legislative initiative that we're pursuing with East Bay Parks, and that would be something that we actually pursued in 2023, which unfortunately got stalled due to outside political forces. So we're reinitiating it this year, and that is to increase the general manager's purchasing authority. And as you may know, that right now with any contracts below or above $50,000 needs to go to the board. Anything below, our general manager can sign off on that. So it would be increasing that potential threshold. And I say potential because obviously that number would have to go to the board for, to set as official policy. So we could set a higher eligible threshold. In this case, we're targeting $200,000, and the board would have to pick a number between 50 and 200 that they're comfortable with. This was the next step in the progression. The last time we did this was in 2015, where AB 495, sponsored or authored by Assemblymember Rich Gordon, increased the signature threshold from 25 to 50,000. The 200,000 number is looking for some parity with counties, just given the number of constituents that we serve. The district's about 770,000 constituents, which is about the same size as San Mateo County, and East Bay serves 3.1 million constituents. State funding is a kind of a blanket category. The one opportunity that I mentioned here is the reauthorization of the state's cap and trade program. And that's expected to come before the legislature this year, either as formal legislation or as a budget trailer bill. And we're looking at assembling a coalition of conservation-minded organizations to push for a carve-out for ongoing land stewardship. As you may know, the state committed to the 30 by 30 goal, conserving 30% of the natural lands of the state by 2030. What that does is creates a perpetual commitment. Right now, it's effectively an unfunded mandate that when you conserve all that land, that you have to manage it in perpetuity. There ought to be a continuous funding source that can help to support that maintenance. So this is an opportunity that has presented itself, and we're looking to organize to affect that. And then finally, workforce development. As you know, the more lands that we acquire, the greater the number of people that need to be out in the field and actually in the office supporting the caretaking of our holdings. So we're working with our counterparts and other stakeholders to increase the depth and resilience of the workforce development pipeline. So it's working with local cores, it's working with local community colleges, even high schools in some cases, and other employers and funders to understand where are the pinch points to creating a land stewardship pipeline and shoring those up. We recently held a convening over in Berkeley under the sponsorship of the California Biodiversity Network, where we had 65 organizations of all these different types that provided feedback on, where are those pinch points, and an action list is forthcoming from that convening, and we hope to support that. Oh, there's more. I'm sorry. Well, first, any questions on the state stuff? Okay.
I had one question.
Oh, sure.
On the GM Purchasing Authority, you talked about outside political influences. You don't need to go into all the detail, but was it something specific to this, or is it?
It was
something broad?
it was an East Bay matter.
I see.
And it had nothing to do with the substance of the bill itself. The bill was being used as a chip.
I see. Okay.
And when that issue was resolved, everybody was friends. And now we just hit the reset button.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. So regional priorities. The first one is self-permitting for local permits. This is kind of a catch-all, but looking at how we can streamline local permitting processes, working with our local partners, the counties. We've certainly made progress on this with the master permitting process in San Mateo County. So it's looking to, continuing to extend that work.
Josh, could you say a little bit more about that? What kind of progress have we made with San Mateo County?
Well, I don't know if we have had agreements with, we worked with county planning and community development on, oh gosh, I'm looking at Brian and Hillary for additional details on the master permit.
My understanding of it was that it was essentially obtaining a county permit for our routine maintenance program, which mirrored what was permitted in the by the state for the regulatory permits. So Susanna could probably expand on that because she negotiated it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Susanna Chen, Assistant General Manager. Last year, we obtained a master permit from San Mateo County. The master permit essentially covers grading permit and the coastal development permit for our routine maintenance activities, as well as small restoration type projects and some facility improvement activities on an annual basis. What that allow us to do is to proceed those type of projects on an annual basis without pursuing individual permits.
Yeah, that's huge.
Mhm.
It seems like I'm wondering what the next steps might be. What's next? What more do we want from San Mateo County?
San Mateo County.
Mhm.
Well, there's a couple things that we're pursuing that the real property department is working with the planning department to streamline some of the acquisitions process in terms of how they recognize the general plan conformance with our projects, our acquisition project. Right now, those individual projects have to go to the planning commissions for approval. And we wanted to streamline that process so that can be processed at the staff level. So that's something that we're pursuing right now.
And so that touches on the lawsuit that the Farm Bureau with regard
No.
to subdivisions, nothing like that. So, okay.
Yeah, that's another step that we have to go through as we process all those land acquisition projects. And in San Mateo and in Santa Clara County, we actually do not have to go through that process because they recognize that all the acquisition projects that the district pursue is in conformance with the general plan. So we don't have to go through that process in Santa Clara County. That's why we're using that as an example. We're pursuing that in San Mateo County. Hopefully, we will get the same type of recognitions, and then we can streamline that process even further.
And so this, sorry, this is important.
Yes.
Are we looking for a legislative fix, or is this just something that we're working through the San Mateo County, just, kind of on a very local level to deal with?
For the two kind of the items that I mentioned, like the master permits or the one that we're currently working on, is at the local level and working with the regulatory agency, in this case is the county, to help to streamline that process. We are not looking at the legislative level for those two particular items that I'm mentioning.
Right.
Could I please just add to that answer a little bit? To answer your question more fully, so Susanna and a lot of other staff have been working for years to build these relationships with individual local agencies around how they're processing certain types of permits that the district has had a practice of applying for. But I think that even just what she's articulated to you right now illustrates an issue that can't necessarily be solved with negotiations with a specific agency, because district operates in 3 counties and 19 cities, and it creates this patchwork of regulations where we're constantly grappling with a different permitting scheme depending on which county we're in or which town or city we're operating in. And so I think that some of the conversations that staff is making really good progress on with the counties is going to inform what type of, if a legislative solution could ease this patchwork issue in a way that builds on the conversations that we're having with the counties, rather than create some sort of, I don't think that we're going to be as successful trying to pursue legislation that makes the counties feel that they don't have a say, or that we're not going to cooperate with them. It's more about how to navigate this patchwork of regulations, and are there certain solutions we might pursue that would kind of ease that patchwork issue in some way that would still meet the counties and cities' needs to have some sort of say in their local land use. So it's definitely an ongoing project for sure.
Yeah, it's exciting because I can't imagine that we're the only special district that has, that works with several different counties that also has this patchwork of regulatory entities that it has to deal with. So finding a legislative fix that might work, not just for us, but for other special districts, seems like a great idea. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm going to ask another question then. Yeah. So for the second item you talked about, you said there's flexibility from Santa Clara County that may help us in the discussion with San Mateo County. Is the reverse true for the first item? I mean, do we have a chance to get the type of blanket permitting with Santa Clara County that we have now with San Mateo?
We already have a grading
Oh,
exemption in
right.
Santa Clara County, and then the other one that's really important in San Mateo County does not apply to is Santa Clara County, which is the coastal development permit.
Oh, I
So
see.
we are not subject to the coastal zone in Santa Clara County.
So then effectively, do we already have the same type of flexibility in Santa Clara County then?
Very similar,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Mhm.
Okay. And this particular item, the self-permitting, is this what actually came out of the FOSM? I mean, there was a discussion specific to the FOSM about self-permitting. And I'm wondering if the things that you've already talked about, at least some were already in flight before that discussion of coming out of FOSM. So I'm wondering, are there specific things that we're targeting now um, that are in addition to those ones we had in flight before. Maybe what Hillary spoke about, but
Well, so what I can and say is that the master permit in San Mateo County is really specific. It covers small scale routine maintenance type projects. We actually work with the San Mateo County staff to kind of expanded that definition a little bit, and they allow us to use that permit coverage to cover some of the a little larger projects. However, it has a limit. We continue to run into permitting problems such as stables, right? And you're very familiar with the permitting challenges that we have with the stable project, which isn't much beyond the master permit will cover. So that is something that's why we continue to pursue other avenues to streamline our permitting process.
okay, thanks.
I'll just quickly add that what Susanna said is true, that by seeking permits from the counties, we're not self-permitting, but we're kind of bolstering our credibility that in many cases, the district is the expert in how we manage our lands and build certain types of facilities for low intensity public recreation on district lands, that counties may not be the best suited to go through our permits when we've already, created plans and have special inspections and all of those things that largely conform with what their permitting process would do. So I think a lot of the conversations we're having with our partner agencies and internally is about what would it mean for the district to self-permit projects or not obtain those permits, but in a way that still kind of fosters a cooperative relationship with those local agencies, if that makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just say that this is a kind of a catch-all statement that depending on how all these discussions pan out, we're here to support them if should a legislative solution be necessary. The second item here is Plan Bay Area. It's been going on for quite some time and continues to evolve over time. Shortly after Plan Bay Area 2050 was ratified, they introduced Plan Bay Area 2050 Plus, and we maintain tabs on that process to see if there's anything relevant. I would say that there's nothing particularly actionable at this point. There was the Priority Conservation Area program that we did assist in both formulating and I believe we'll be accessing sometime in the not too distant future. And yeah, I don't think there's much more to say about that other than it's a more of a watch priority. The next item after it though is connected, the regional funding. There have been a number of regional funding proposals. If you've heard of the BAFA housing bond that was proposed, Bay Area Housing Finance Authority, $20 billion for that. There was a carve out in there for about $200 million for that could potentially go to things like urban greening that we might have been able to access. So keeping tabs on those. There's a plan floating around right now for a sizable transportation funding measure. It's still in the works, but that's targeted for 2026. The BAFA one's still out there. It got scuttled by the poor polling of ACA. I'm tempted to say 5, but it was ACA 1, which ultimately became Prop 5. But the poor polling on that essentially decommitted BAFA, so that's still hanging out there. But for 2026, there's a transportation funding measure, and things like the shuttle for Purissima. Maybe, if we are able to ingratiate ourselves into that process, we can ask for things like that to be considered as an eligible funding funding target. So we keep tabs on that process as well. Regional collaboration, nothing really gets done by individual organizations these days. So we continue to invest our time in fostering and building those collaborations, examples of which are things like Together Bay Area, the Bay Area Trails Collaborative, and others. My focus is primarily the legislative space, so things that have more of a policy angle to them. And then finally, the active transportation program we talked about in an earlier slide with regard to accessibility. This continues to be a large funding source that we try to bend to our needs as well. And then for federal priorities, just simply to say that we pursue federal priorities in support of our state priorities. So the ones that we covered at the state level, if there's a federal nexus there, we'll pursue those as well. And I believe that is the end of my presentation.
You have a question? Well, yeah, thank you very much. Jed, do you have questions? No.
Not a question. I just think it was a very busy program, Josh. And thank you for keeping track of it. That's a big part of it.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll try to talk. Just want to say thank you. As always, it's amazing to see the breadth and scope of what you pull together and keep your arms around at all the times. And when we ask you questions, you always know that the actual bill numbers and stuff. It's like, thank you very much, Josh. We appreciate it. And I have no more questions.
I had one question. I was looking through the document in the detailed list of positions, and wildlife corridors are in there a number of times, but they didn't appear in the top level priorities. I was wondering, was that something that was discussed and intentionally done, or is that?
Yeah, it's one of those perennial priorities for us, and it continues to be a priority for us. But we've made a lot of progress in the policy realm, and it makes it actually challenging to introduce new legislation focused on wildlife crossings because so much has been done, and the sentiment is, let's see how this pans out first. AB 2344, which established this collaborative relationship between Caltrans and CDFW. Both of them have recently created whole departments focused on wildlife connectivity or habitat connectivity, and they are raring to get out there to assist projects. So we want to see how that unfolds. One nice thing about particularly the CDFW portion of it is that they are not just focused on Caltrans, but also on other roads. They want to be of assistance. Director Holman has on a number of occasions expressed interest in extending that to, non-Caltrans maintained roads. This department can do just that. So we need to give them a chance. Last year, we significantly supported AB 1889 and actually AB 2320, I'm tempted to say. That one actually died in appropriations, but 1889 passed. So habitat connectivity needs to be integrated into general plans as they're renewed. That's going to take a while for them to manifest themselves. So we felt that we had enough baseline work to do in that space, particularly around fundraising for Highway 17 and then the Newt project, that we didn't need to make it a primary focus for this year.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. I guess the other question I have, and maybe it's out of scope for this discussion, but as you mentioned urban greening, and you also made a comment about, you know, open space being sort of away from people. But I think there is more and more attention on trying to get people access to nature closer to where they are. And I'm just wondering if going forward, this is probably a hard thing for Midpen because we can't go in and buy big chunks of land in the valley, right? You can't find the type of land that we normally buy there. Maybe our engagement would need to be different, but you could also imagine that if Midpen is partnering with maybe cities or other agencies or I don't know who, that you might be able to help things happen that wouldn't happen otherwise. For example, Midpen has know-how in restoration that might, you know, be combined with some other type of project, and maybe you would be able to get grants that you wouldn't get if an agency like Midpen wasn't involved. So I'm wondering, do you see this changing as we go into the future with the 2050 plans? And
It's certainly a board I think that ventures into kind of the board policy area. But there's certainly examples of that. The Open Space Authority has a pretty robust urban greening grant program of their own, where they assist with local cities in their efforts to green. There's certainly recognition that urban greening has habitat value. So the board would have to take that into consideration in defining an envelope of our participation in that space.
all right, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Okay. And would somebody like to make a motion on part 2 of the general manager's recommendation? I think we have no action on the first, or we've completed the first. Oh, do we have any public comment?
No public comments.
Thank you.
I'll move the general manager's recommendations 1 and 2.
Roll call.
Director Seer,
Yes.
Chair Gleason,
Yes.
Director Kirsten Tucker.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you very much. We're adjourned.